Welcome to the Industrialist Podcast, the ultimate destination for profound insights into the world of industrial entrepreneurship. At the Industrialist Podcast, our mission is to unravel the tales of triumph and resilience from successful owners, CEOs, and leaders who've not only founded but scaled industrial companies in the US and across the globe. Each episode will bring you unfiltered conversations with manufacturing visionaries, exploring their journeys from accountability and learning curves to tough decisions and crisis management. What sets us apart? These are the real stories told by those who bear the full responsibility of family businesses impacting countless lives. Join us on the Industrial Podcast, where raw conversations about real-life success stories provide the insights leaders need to tackle their own business challenges and turn them into opportunities. Get ready to dive into the world of manufacturing excellence. This is the Industrialist Podcast, where industry leaders, real stories, and actionable strategies converge. Welcome to another enlightening episode of the Industrialist Podcast. I'm Ann Capel, co-founder of Altix Consulting, your host for today's dive into the revolutionary world of modern farming. Alongside me is Yannick Shelley, co-founder of President and CEO of Altix Consulting, who will guide us through a compelling conversation. Today we're honored to have with us Tisha Livingston and Mike Zelkind, the visionary co-founders of 80 Acres Farms. Known for transforming the landscape of food production, 80 Acres Farms stands at the forefront of the indoor farming revolution. By producing a wide variety of crops year-round, entirely indoors, and powered by 100% renewable electricity, they have set a new benchmark for sustainable and efficient farming. The name 80 Acres Farms tells a unique story, not about the land they use, but about the incredible efficiency they achieve. Their first farm, a mere quarter acre, could produce as much food as 80-acre traditional farm, thanks to the advanced vertical farming techniques. Today, their farms produce even more, all while staying true to their commitment to sustainability and innovation. 80 Acres Farms champions the freshest, most nutritious food, free from pesticides and excessive food miles. Their locally grown produce ensures peak season freshness year-round, extending the shelf life of fruits and vegetables and providing exceptional value to consumers. Utilizing 95% less water than traditional farming and growing up to 300 times more food per square foot, they embody the future of sustainable agriculture. Under the leadership of Tisha and Mike, 80 Acres Farms is not just about producing food, it's about creating a new standard of food transparency and traceability from seed to store. Their dedication to real food and sustainability has redefined what it means to grow and consume fresh produce. So without further ado, let's join Yannick Shelley and prepare for an insightful and inspiring conversation with our distinguished guests, Tisha Livingston and Mike Zelkind. This is the Industrialist Podcast, where real leaders, real stories, and actionable strategies unfold.
So, welcome to the Industrialist Podcast. Good morning, Tisha. Good morning, Mike. You cannot believe how excited I am today to have this conversation with both of you. We have exchanged in the past. I had the chance to visit your farms and to exchange with you in the past. But what a treat to have you today for this podcast and to make our audience participate in your unbelievable story of what's going on in the agro-tech. So can't wait to start and to have that conversation with you. But why don't we start with a brief round of introduction? So maybe ladies first. Tisha, if you could introduce yourself and share a little bit about your background and what you have done before starting the 80 Acres journey.
Yannick, it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to be able to be on the podcast with you and with my partner, Mike. So my background, I'm the co-founder of 80 Acres Farms, and I've had 30 years in the food industry, working in all different types of manufacturing, operations, operational excellence and continuous improvement, operational finance. I've done a series of due diligence, mergers, acquisitions, and then integration of many different companies.
Thank you, Tisha. Mike, what about you? So if you could introduce yourself, Mike, and also share how you and Tisha met and what has been the circumstances of your first encounters.
Good morning. Thank you for having us. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here on this podcast. My background is food manufacturing, food production, technology, and agriculture, somewhat similar to Tisha's. I've been running food companies for about 15 years now, in the last 15 years together with Tisha. My background is General Mills, Conagra, Honeywell, Del Monte Foods, and a variety of other companies. Tisha and I have done 3 private equity deals together that we're very fortunate. They were all very successful. And I had a privilege of doing 1 private equity deal alone prior to meeting Tisha. We met when I moved to Cincinnati from California to run operations for a company called, at the time, Pierre Foods. That's when I met Tisha. I realized that Tisha was, if not the most capable, and I'm going to try to be modest here for Tisha so her head doesn't get too big too early in a podcast here, but one of the most capable, and honestly, I think she is the most capable executive in a country. She's able to understand operational issues. She's able to manage boards. She can go up and down the organizational ladder, so to speak, and be effective at every level and drive value everywhere. So we partnered up about 15, 16 years ago at Advanced Pierre Foods. It was Pierre Foods became Advanced Pierre Foods. We bought the Advanced Food Company, Advanced Brand Company, and several other companies. Built it up. The business was sold. We moved on to run a different business together called Allen's Canning, which became Sager Creek Vegetable Company, another private equity deal. That's when we realized that there was an issue with the way the world farmed. There was an issue with agriculture as it stands today, from sustainability, effectiveness, really applying technology to agriculture, and frankly, the consumer value that is being delivered. As Tisha says, and I don't want to steal her thunder here, but she always talks about a consumer desired this fresh, healthy, local food. But the supply chains that we have built in our previous careers, which are highly efficient, by the way. Everybody always talks about inefficient supply chains. Supply chains that exist in the food industry are highly efficient and effective. It's just that they were built to deliver food for the lowest possible cost from the field to the plate. And the rules have changed. The goalposts have moved. Right now, it's not just delivering food for the lowest cost. You have a variety of other constituencies that require cleaner, healthier food, more sustainable production, fresher, and all those things that we realized that the agriculture system couldn't build. So when Tisha and I were running the company that we renamed to Sager Creek Vegetable Company and eventually sold it to Del Monte Foods, and took over Del Monte Foods, we decided that we needed to leave and start this business. So we've been working together for about 15, 16 years now. And we're looking forward to doing a lot more with 80 Acres here.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for sharing those introductions and for sharing that part of your career. So Tisha, if you don't mind expanding now on what Mike was describing, just so everybody gets an idea here, we all imagine with 7 or 8 billion people on the planet, there is a lot of mouths to feed, and just give us here a little bit an order of magnitude of what we are talking about, and talk a little bit about how you guys decided to join forces now, how the idea of 80 Acres was born, and what's the mission you are going after. What is the problem you're trying to solve?
Yes, thank you, Yannick. So when Mike and I first came up with the idea of 80 Acres Farms, it was really as a result of the Sager Creek vegetable experience that we had. The company was struggling. They didn't have produce to be able to put into a can, to be able to sell, to get out of bankruptcy. And so we had to meet with farmers all over the U.S. We started down in the Gulf of Mexico and Texas and drove all the way to Wisconsin, meeting every grower and aggregator that we could. We also did the same thing in Florida, going from the Panhandle all the way to Buffalo, New York, meeting with all of these growers. And the thing that we understood from them is that farming is very hard and it's unpredictable. And you can't control the light units, the heat units. You can't control the soils. Your soils are depleted, the pest pressure. And they knew that they wanted to be able to feed the world, but there's a lot of issues. And when we boiled it down, it was really that they couldn't control their environment. We knew that we needed to be able to bring technology along to be able to help enhance the food supply. We also knew that more and more people are not wanting to eat processed foods. They want the center of the store is shrinking in retail and the perimeter is growing. More and more people want to be able to eat fresh, wholesome food that tastes great. So we knew that agriculture today had to change. We also knew that the technology continued to develop. So we felt like it was a great inflection point back in 2015, 2014, where we could really start jumping in, researching, understand the technology, understand the consumer preference and demand, and really start the research and the work around 80 acres.
Thank you, Tisha. So, agriculture is a big industry and lots of hands and lots of equipment working on that, probably millions of people. So having the vision that's something what needs to evolve, and how can we make that evolve? That's pretty grandiose, I would say. So Mike, talk a little bit about that vision and how you went from, we have an observation of a problem to, hey, let's found a company and let's address exactly that. And if you can also share a little bit how, founding a company is a big undertaking. It's linked to risk. How did you embark your families to accompany you on that, what could sound a little bit as a crazy adventure?
Yeah, those are all great questions, and I can probably spend the next hour talking about them. So I will attempt to summarize. I'll start with a grandiose vision because you're right. It is a grandiose vision. If you think about the value chain in food, from, the supply chain being a large chunk of it, but then add all the consumer aspects and add all the front end stuff. If you truly vertically integrate this into the seed production and everything else, food systems used to be local. And when they were local, people were connected to the food. People knew where food came from. A few people would feed initially their family, then they would feed their community, then they started feeding regions, and food production escalated. And it lowered the cost of food, and it became very, very efficient and effective. But the bigger you get, sometimes in the process of driving these extreme efficiencies, you lose things. And that's why food systems in Europe are different than the US. You go around the world, Asia and others, very different food systems, right? Everything has evolved differently. I'll talk about a US food system, though, again, what I'm saying will apply globally, because even though there's specific unique differences, the issues holistically are the same. As the food systems expanded, you started having landowners, and then you started having people working that land, farmers, and then you started having processors that contract the farmers and contract the land, and they don't know what the weather is going to be, so they're just contracting what they think they will need based on projected yields. They started contracting acreage of production, and then nature, God, whatever your belief system is, impacts the actual world, and you get what you get. So you have this supply that is very disconnected from the demand. Demand is a lot more consistent. There's seasonal changes and everything else, but the changes in demand are usually inflicted through marketing programs and things that companies drive, and supply is impacted by nature, God, whatever. So you have this massive disconnect of supply and demand. So the industry started building where steps started coming in, and all these people started inserting themselves into these long, massive supply chains to try to protect the product, transfer it, make sure that it survives these complex supply chains, because there's only so many places in U.S., Salinas, California, Yuma, Arizona for 3 months a year for leafy greens, for example. Tomatoes are a little different. You got, again, Kern County in California. You got Florida. You got a little bit in Michigan. But the point is there are few areas that have the right climate and long enough season to be able to produce these products. So we start developing these supply chains to get the product from point A to point B. Well, as these farms and processors got larger and larger, you realize that everybody just owns their little piece, their silo. And there was such disconnect between silos, and there was different incentives along the silo that when you pull back today and you look at the system that we created, it is very different than the original intention. It makes me think of, that famous story that I love to tell to everybody is, Kraft macaroni and cheese. Sorry, all our Kraft Heinz friends. But, in 1972, there was this gold standard formula for what Kraft mac and cheese used to be. And it was a phenomenal product. I didn't eat it, but I heard it was a phenomenal product. I was too young, but, and not in this country, unfortunately. But the point is that over the years, through simplification and cost reductions and everything else, we get the product that we have today that many people don't want their kids to put it in their bodies. And every formulation change is not that different from the last formulation change, so you can justify it. But when you look at the last 40 or 50 years, the product's been bastardized so much that it doesn't resemble the original product at all. Same thing has happened with our value chain, supply chain, and produce. When you look at the total value chain today, unfortunately, you have 16 to 17 different parties touching your product from the farm until it gets to the table, but 14 or 15 of them really don't add any value. In fact, if anything, realistically, you could break the cold chain. There's value destruction risk at every step of the way. And these supply chains aren't linked. So what Tisha and I realized from this grandiose vision, it was a grandiose vision, going back to your original question, it is really difficult to not just plug into a silo with an app, or I'm going to be a processor, I'm going to be this and that, but to re-envision the whole value chain, starting with a blank sheet of paper and saying, wait a second, if you were to redesign it, what would you do? And Tisha and I realized 9-10 years ago that you can collapse all of these 17 steps into 2 or 3 steps. And you can truly disenfranchise all the non-value-added components. And by doing that in a process, you can make sure that the farmer now is the processor, and it's the most efficient, sustainable way to grow things. And it's almost a distributor, and it's an operator. And the farmer can collapse all those steps. You can place that farm close to the point of consumption, not in the cities, which is a big misnomer. Everybody always wants to have farms in big cities. You need them by distribution centers of your customers, because that last mile has been created. It's highly efficient. CPGs have it, Kroger's have it, retail has it, food service has it. If you can plug into the efficient part of the supply chain, but collapse everything else, the question became, how do you do it? That's where technology comes in. We always say that it's not technology for the sake of technology, but if you can bring technology to agriculture, collapse those 15 silos into one, now the farmer can make money, the retailer can make money because they're operating very thin margins, and the consumer, most importantly, is going to get incredibly high quality product that is exactly what Tisha was saying. It's fresh, it's clean, it's nutritious, it's grown sustainably, and you can do it for the right price. That's the vision.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mike, for sharing that. So Tisha, I totally get the concept. And actually, I'm amazed that you guys have made that analysis and derived those conclusions. It's brilliant. So now my question is, so Tisha, we go from that vision, that realization, that observation, we can put it on paper and we can show, oh, that's the value stream, and let's cut out 80% of what's non-added value. Makes a lot of sense. But now still, we are early stage. We have quite paper in front of us. And how do we go from that idea stage to the entrepreneurial stage and where you are today? Inventing, how will we make it happen? You speak about technology. We'll come to that in a second. But how do we come from, we have that grandiose idea to, that's what we're going to do. And that's how we get there. Talk about that, Tisha, for a moment.
Yeah, Yannick. So when I think about the early days of 80 Acres, the thing about Mike and I is that we're lifetime learners and we're very curious. And so we knew that there was this problem in supply chain. We knew there was a problem with the food that was being delivered to Ohio. And we knew we wanted to make changes. So we started looking at the technology and we started researching. And so we would research all of the local universities within the US and their expertise around agriculture. And then we also went to the Netherlands because our original premise was, let's build greenhouses and we'll put them all over the US. We quickly learned that greenhouses are a unique problem to solve every time you install a greenhouse because of the climate, because of the conditions, and they're very hard to replicate. And so we did learn from the Netherlands, which we can talk about the roots there at some point early in 2015. But we also knew that that probably wasn't the right solution exactly. Everything was in the grower's hands, and really being able to have that master grower in a greenhouse to be able to be successful was pivotal and key. We went the extreme opposite, and we went to Japan. And we started researching the vertical farms there because in 2011, the Fukushima disaster, the soils were contaminated in Japan. Everyone was trying to figure out how to provide food security for Japan and how to grow on the islands without using soil. So the government invested a lot of money in helping growers convert chip factories into vertical farms. So they really were the origination of vertical farming. And we spent some time there, and what we quickly realized was that was an engineering problem for the Japanese at the time. They were growing 3 lettuces, and they were continuing to try to perfect those 3 lettuces using engineers. And they really didn't believe that growers had a place in the vertical farm. So we went back to the US and realized that we had these polar opposites, and we knew that we needed to meet somewhere in the middle. And so we began our own research and development. We started building our own small vertical farms. Mike and I self-funded this company. And so we had to be very capital efficient, knowing that whatever we did was probably going to be wrong. And so we started very small. We actually started with containers, and we started growing in all of the different systems that were out there and learning what the plants like, what the plants don't like, but then also testing not only the premise around the technology, but the premise around the customer and the consumer, and that we could provide products that tasted great, that lasted longer on shelf, and really was what the consumer wanted. And finally, that we could make money at it. And so we began this whole research and development effort. Then we decided that it was time to transition into a farm that actually was bringing some of the technology together with the growing. And then once we had spent enough time there and identified that, yes, in fact, this does work and we can differentiate and we have line of sight to profitability, we built our first reference design farm, which is the farm in Hamilton, Ohio. And then once we were successful and we got to profitability in that farm, which is the only vertical farm that I'm aware of that's actually profitable in the world, we knew that it was time to then scale. And so that's when we started building our farm in Florence, and we've been expanding across the US.
And if I may just add and clarify or add a little color, Tisha said that we had these polar opposite, these extremes when she was talking about different geographies, Asia in particular, Japan versus Europe. I want to just double click on it for a second. You know, political cultures and histories do drive mentalities of companies, and startups behave in a certain way that is culturally appropriate, and bigger companies behave in a certain way. And I think a lot of the value can come from not judging, but understanding those preferences and those cultural biases, and then figuring out when those cultural biases and preferences are most valuable and when, frankly, they block. So the specific point that Tisha was talking about is, you know, in Japan and Asia, there was this perfectionist mentality that you had to take this problem of contaminated soils and everything else, and you had to solve it through pure engineering. So you had hundreds and hundreds of electrical and mechanical engineers and others designing systems without a lot of grower knowledge. On the other hand, in Europe, there is a very rich culture of agronomy and belief in farmers and fairness to all current producers. So there was a very heavy bias towards agronomy and green thumbs and tradition rather than truly applying technology to solve a lot of these problems. And that was the big aha moment for us, because we realized that culturally there were these blocks, these structural impediments that, disabled companies in those regions to be able to truly drive the future that was necessary, that was truly a combination of the two. You needed to bring this agronomy prowess that permeated Europe so much with the technology and engineering that Japan wanted to do, but you had to marry the two instead of have a strong bias one direction or the other. That's why we ended up not buying any existing systems, but coming in and starting to build our own and bringing folks from all of those cultures together, along with a lot of the Americans with, their different strengths and capabilities. And that's where the collaborative nature of our company and the partnerships that we're so proud of, instead of having to invent everything here ourselves, originated. We realized that this was a big, grandiose vision, a problem, and the only way to solve it was nobody was smart enough. We have a rule, we didn't make it up, but we love the rule that if we're the smartest people in the room or at the table, we're in the wrong room or at the wrong table. So we had to utilize the strength and the experience and the wisdom and the capability of others to solve this. A lot of components of what we're trying to do have been solved. They were just never put together the right way. So our whole approach was very unique in solving this problem. Going back to your original question, how did you do it? We realized that there were early pioneers in the industry, but we had a very different approach. We weren't looking to just kind of paint the picture. We knew that to do this right, you have to change the way the world farms and the way the world eats. And to do that, there's going to be massive structural impediments, because there's going to be a whole bunch of disintermediate parties. And if we're talking too early, we're going to have people shooting at us way too early before we're ready to protect our turf, so to speak. So we stayed quiet for the first 8 years. We weren't in stealth mode. We aren't shy. We're happy to talk to folks, but we thought that there were enough other people that were talking and painting a picture. And it's important for new industry to have folks that are articulating the vision, getting people there. And there were a lot of people that want to be the voice of the industry. So we sat back and we gave them that opportunity. And we decided that with our team, we're going to collaborate, we're going to find the right partners, and we're going to quietly build this, and our turn to talk will come. And that turn is frankly coming.
I think the only thing that I'd like to add is that we knew that this was technology-enabled agriculture. And not only is it a technology play, but it's an execution play. And you have to be operators, you have to be executors, you have to do 1,000 little things right, and you have to pay attention to the customer and the consumer, as well as develop the technology. So you had to keep all those balls in the air together.
This is a great segue in my next question, Tisha, and talk a little bit about that. So from the early days, from the research, and it's fascinating, Mike, what you describe about the different food cultures and what the Japanese eat and the Europeans eat, and how you are recombining that and reinventing a new path based on all the evolution in the past. It's fascinating. So Tisha, talk a little bit about from the early stage, from the first farms, from the first, let's say, experiments, what have been key milestones and where we stand today on our evolution journey? And to me, and this is why it fits so well into that podcast, which talks about the industrialists, what you are doing is really what industrialists do. They are changing the game. They are reinventing the wheel in a better way. Make them evolve. Yeah, we saw we're at the top of that evolution, but no, we are not. Evolution never stops, and there is always a progress. So talk about those key milestones, and then we'll go a little bit deeper in the role of technology in what you are doing.
Yeah, I would say that there are so many milestones that were pivotal for us in our business. One of the key milestones was figuring out the box, right? Figuring out how to efficiently grow crops indoors, because it is different than anything in a greenhouse. It's different than anything outdoors. And so being able to optimize and really figure out the combination of biology, engineering, and technology and those intersections is something that was really important for us. We knew that we had to be able to stop eliminate the backbreaking labor associated with farming. We couldn't have risky behavior in our farms with scissor lifts or ladders. We had to be able to provide the proper automation and the proper level of technology and control to be able to grow the crops efficiently, effectively, from a CapEx and OpEx perspective, right on, but then also do it safely. I think another key milestone was when we were able to achieve the ramp up with Kroger. Because not only is it important for you to be able to have a great product and be able to do it in a cost-effective manner, but you have to be able to have the distribution. You have to be able to sell the product into the marketplace in order to be able to get to scale. Because you can be lettuce for the rich, you can be, produce that's very niche, but being able to go into mainstream grocery retail and being able to sell the product to everyone where it's affordable for all is super important to us and a huge milestone for us. And then I would say the third is around the capital raising. And so this is a capital intensive business. It's one of the things that, Mike and I have many balls we have to juggle, and we have a lot of muscles that we have to be able to develop. And so you have to be able to develop the technology and the operational ability. You have to be able to develop the relationship with the customer and the consumer, the marketing pull, and everyone having that brand love. But then you also have to be able to fund the business. And so being able to make sure that we're focused on a compelling story around how we really can change the way the world eats, how we can really scale this business to make an impact has also been key. And so being able to have these different milestones to be able to fundraise and to be able to bring in new investors to be able to help us make this dream become a reality.
And I'd love to, if I may, just maybe add a few things again. I think if I even pull that up, I know Tisha laid out a really kind of wonderful, comprehensive vision here, but if I pull up to our original thought and kind of tie the last couple of questions you asked together, how do you go from vision to reality? How did you do it? And what are the milestones? Tisha and I always felt that we have to, quote unquote, prove the concept before we can do anything else. But to us, the way we defined proof of the concept was very, very different. And in there, I'll cover some of the milestones. We felt that there were three things we had to establish to ourselves, first and foremost. Really four, but we'll just say three. We had to prove that we could grow in this new format differently, consistently high yields with the right unit economics. That's what Tisha called make sure the box works, right? That's the ability to grow, but not go through one cycle or three cycles, not do it for three varieties of lettuce as she referred to before, but do it for a broad range of crops. Do it consistently, go through cycles, show incremental improvement, show the learnings, and show that we can do it with right unit economics, with superior product. You have to have superior product. If we're doing something differently, we have to invest a lot of capital for the same result. Full stop. We self-funded this company, we would have stopped. We were the toughest investors because we were the investors and the operators. So there was no disconnect. There was no over-committing to investors and underachieving because, it was the same group. So growing is important. The second piece to prove this concept was build a new supply chain. As I said, collapse it into something meaningful. And what that means is use the last mile. To do that, you have to build real partnerships within supply chain. Tisha talked about Kroger and how important it is to sell product, and most importantly, then align that supply to demand. When I was defining the problem before, I said there's a supply, there's an act of God, and there's a demand that is somewhat fixed, and that mismatch and that waste, that inherent waste, is what drives so many problems, one of many things that drives problems and really impacts profitability with companies. because we would totally control the environment and control our supply, and then having consistent demand, we felt we could eliminate that waste. And that is a massive component that would be impossible to duplicate for anybody else outside of this way of growing. So the growing consistently with high yields was important. This new supply chain that is highly efficient, super effective, only value-added steps, very close, use the last mile, have the right partners, and drive all the waste out by match supply and demand. And the last thing is, because produce has grown in the same fields, everything's disintermediated, it has become a commodity. When there was a spinach recall a while ago, every farm got affected. Everybody used the same water. It's the same land. It's the same growers. It's just different packing houses. There are no brands in produce today. They're labels, because a brand by definition has to stand for something. A brand is a consumer promise. When you're getting the same product from the same fields, today there's more sun, so you get one quality of product. Tomorrow there's less rain and more cloud coverage. You get different quality.
So Mike, I have a question on that customer and the demand. At what point in your journey did you realize we got the technology, we got the concept proof? When did you know in the journey customers will also accept it and there will be a demand for that? When in the journey did you realize that?
Yeah, that was part of this third part of proof the concept, right? You prove the growth system, you prove the supply chain. We had to prove that we could differentiate the product. And the way we thought about it is, we've been in the food industry long enough with Tisha. These retailers and food service providers know that we're not going to overpromise and underdeliver. They've worked with us for 25, 30 years. So we knew we could get the product into the channel. The real question was exactly what you said. What is the right way to merchandise it? What is the playbook to get into the market, get the customer excited? We don't want to be charging a lot more. We wanted to give a highly differentiated product, make more money by taking out the silos than traditional agriculture players and partners, but we had to differentiate. So we had to come up with different flavors, with different textures, with freshness. We did a lot of consumer research. We have a phenomenal consumer research team and marketing team and branding team. And a lot of it, by the way, started by bringing family into the business, because when we started, we couldn't afford others. And we were very lucky, both of us, that we have phenomenally capable families that came in. We did a lot of consumer research on what are the trends? What does a customer want? We didn't just kind of throw things out there. We know that customer wants freshness. That's the number one thing. We knew that how customer shops, they look at the package, they flip it over. We've watched customers for hundreds of hours on how they make decisions. We understand that it's important to get the right planogram in a store, because you put your three facings out there. Even if the customer likes your product, they're never going to find it again, because they take 2 seconds to make a decision of produce aisle. We understood there's so many rules of thumb that we have put in. We will walk away from retailers and food service providers that, and we have, from some of the biggest in the world, we have walked away because they felt that their 24-year-old category manager knows more about the category. For us, it's existential. We don't need to sell to Walmart early on, because the way that they would merchandise it is too early for the industry to make money at. So at the right time, it could make sense, but we made the decisions that needed to get the industry to the right place, to get the consumers to try the product. And the product performs so well that they will repeat, they will buy more. We drive incrementality to the category. We tested all that. We played with it a lot. But that's part of, you can't try to start something and be all things to all people and just say yes to everybody. Just because a customer is huge and they're telling you what they need, you have to look at the consumer. You have to give a superior product to the consumer, and you have to believe that if you truly have a superior product with the consumer, the customer will get there. And we found an incredible partner in Kroger that, by the way, understood this, that felt the same way, and that made us prove every step of the way. We started with 1 store, and then 9 stores, and 32 stores, and 300 stores, and 850 stores, 1,250 stores. I mean, Kroger didn't give us anything. Kroger made us earn everything, but they did it the right way. They gave us the planogram. They gave us the help. They gave us the merchandising help. They partnered with us, understanding where the gaps that they had to help us do it. It's really key to find the right partner when you're a small company, or you will do all things to all people. You're going to have great press releases, and the company will die.
Perfect. And all the people we know love your products. And we are blessed to have you here right across the corner to always discover those new products as they launch. Tisha, I want to come back to the technology dimension. Explain a little bit why in this day and age is exactly the right time to do what you do, because I believe 20 years ago, the technology would not have supported what you are trying to accomplish now. So talk a little bit about how technology enables you to do what you do, and how you mentioned partnerships a little bit earlier. Expand a little bit on how not solve everything on our own, but let's partner with professionals and industries who know what they do to bring all that technology into our environment.
Yeah, that's quite a mouthful, but I would go back to the early days when Mike and I were looking at technology and there was no technology out there. But we knew that there was a need, and we knew that there was a consumer need. We started looking at some of the trends. So when you think about LED lights, at the time, 2015, people were still arguing about the benefits of LED lights and whether LED lights were more efficient, more effective than high pressure sodium lights for growing plants. Well, the lighting equation was a huge one. We saw that the cost of LED lights was going down. We saw that the efficacy continued to go up. So the efficiency of the energy utilization was improving. We saw that you were able to take large amounts of data, because when you think about vertical farming and technology, it's all about the data. It's about learning from the crop growth, learning from how the plants are reacting, and then being able to act on it, and then be able to learn more. So optimization and constantly looking at these learning cycles, these learning loops, to be able to drive improvement in yield and efficiency across your farm. So we saw that it became more efficient to be able to process large amounts of data. Those are two indicators that told us that while the industry was still young, that we knew those costs were going to continue to go down, and then it would make sense to be able to jump in and you'd have the right business model. So we were watching technology from the side. We were identifying the key drivers of the technology and other industries like solar and data processing and things like that were improving. So we knew that it was just a matter of time. We also knew in 2015 that Mike and I are good at a lot of things, but we're not good at everything. And we don't know everything. And this was a big problem to solve, because not only were we trying to figure out agriculture and how to be able to bring plants indoors and how to be able to get the most out of them, stressing them, getting the right nutrients out of those plants, being able to have them grow efficiently. But we also knew that we needed to build a business, that we needed to be able to have a marketing program that really talked to consumers. So our strategy was around identifying in the world where the best technology was. So who's the best lighting supplier? Who is the sensor and camera control systems? Who is the most influential or the most knowledgeable around process automation? And how do we think about building out automation and not have to do it ourselves? How do we rely on industry experts who are like-minded, right? They have to be like-minded. They have to have the same vision of being able to change the world, to be able to introduce this new technology, to really be able to improve agriculture and drive technology through agriculture. So we began the journey, and we started with Priva out of the Netherlands. They were our first technology partner. We purchased a farm from them, and it didn't work all that well. And so that's really when we said, okay, we're at a crossroads. Do we, fire them and make it on our own and just figure it out? Or do we figure out how to collaborate with them, take the knowledge, the experience that they have, and be able to merge it with the experience and knowledge that we have to be able to make a better product? And that was actually the creation of Infinite Acres, which is our technology company that 80 Acres owns. So it was that idea. So we were born out of the idea of collaboration. And then there were other partners that came along. So Philips Signify came along. Six Sensors out of Germany came along. Siemens has been instrumental in building out that industrial platform. So as we started, we really were just starting to look. And then what we did, because everyone says, oh, so you're an integrator of everyone else's technology. Not at all. Because we're innovating in the gap. We are the brains across our system. So what we're doing is we're allowing people that have core competencies in certain areas to use their core competency. And then we're taking that along with everyone else's core competency, optimizing it and figuring out how to get the absolute most out of the plants to be able to really leverage it.
Yeah, and that's really key because if you're really going to recreate the industry and build this, you have to think a couple moves ahead. And even if you can do the three things that I talked about before, figure out how to grow these incredible crops much more efficiently at the right cost, figure out how to plug in with your retail partners into that last mile, and figure out how to differentiate the product. That's all wonderful, but how do you scale? Because nobody wants to be a hobby farm. So to truly scale, you need standards. You need a modularized system that is standardized and industrialized. And the best way to do it is to have standard parts, standard components, standard outputs, so you can tie your whole system together with a single pane of glass, if you will. So everything communicates, everything is clean. So wherever we put the farm globally in the world, we can have the visibility in our war room on our iPhone of exactly what is happening. We have a network of farms. They're all connected. They all speak the same language. They have the same KPIs. We can move people between them. They all use the same PLCs. You have a scalable model that is truly, again, modularized, standardized, industrialized. It's the only way to scale. And we've both taken over with Tisha a bunch of family businesses that were incredible concepts. And this is where humbly call it the wisdom of age comes in, that we've taken over a bunch of random food assets, manufacturing companies that were different family companies. You try to slam them together. They all have different plants, different systems, different everything. You can't share a spare parts room. You can't share assets. You can't share learnings. Everything are these disparate units, and you have a hodgepodge of these weird assets that you can never truly operate efficiently. And that's the problem with conglomerates back in the 80s, right? When everybody started just buying everything, but there were no true synergies. All the synergies were fake, and then they would evaporate. So the idea was, how do we, from the beginning, build and design a system that is ultimately scalable? So when we get to that part, it had to be scalable and had to be sustainable. And just one last point, sustainability. Sustainability is really reduction of waste, right? It's synonymous. Absolutely. And if you build it into your design, then it's not just lip service that you pay to a certain part of the population. It is good, solid design. It is the most cost-effective way, most efficient ways to drive your operations, which is also great for the world, for the community, for the person using it, right? So we built all that into our original design.
Mike, that's brilliant. And just to come back for a second on that I think what you're doing is really a masterpiece, because you're looking at all of that and building that, not only that company, but also that technology and probably the food of tomorrow. And to me, it's like, it's not solving one equation, it's solving many equations at the same time. It's an entire system of entrepreneurial equations. And what's amazing is not only you can map the equation, but also solve them. And whether it's the product or the technology or the market, everything is coming nicely together. And it's working. So congratulations on those accomplishments. I think I have a lot of admiration. So
job not done, but thank you.
I know it's a journey. It's never done. And I want to come back to that original question of the industrialists. So you both stand in the shoes of leaders for smaller or larger organizations, and you are now entrepreneurs, and with a really pronounced industrialist mindset, I would say. So For our audience, explain a little bit what differences you have observed between being the leader in a large organization and being the founder or the co-founder of an organization, an entrepreneur. What does it take to win as an entrepreneur, as an industrial entrepreneur?
Look, I'm a big believer that most startups are likely to fail. Very few will make it past a year, 5 years, and 10 years. And there are absolutely no guarantees for success of a startup, but there are guarantees for failure. And the guarantees for failure there are many, many signs. There is the quote unquote lack of commitment, trying to keep other jobs while you're doing it as a safety net. It's lack of commitment. It's lack of curiosity. It's thinking that you have the answer and you're going to steadfast hold to it no matter what. As an entrepreneur, in a big company, you have a train that is moving fast. It's on rails. Everything is good. You just got to not get it off the rails and not hit anything in front of you and stay alert, right? I mean, it's not easy, obviously, but it's a very, very different mentality of how you ink out a couple % improvement every year because you've levered the business, and that couple % will equal your 10% and you look like a genius. And everything is kind of moving along and you got to not screw it up. And if you do a little bit better, that's great. Big businesses are generally, everybody wants creativity, but you can't handle creativity because you can't take a risk on jeopardizing your core business. In a startup, it's completely the opposite. It's completely different. And we've ran both and we understand both. In a startup, there is no core business. There is no success keeping the train on rails. You got to build that train, build the rail system, keep pushing it manually with your friends and family until you build the engine that starts moving its own. And eventually you hope it starts moving. You can start thinking about other things, right? It's all about creativity. It's all about burning the boats. It's all about 1,000% commitment. One of the early questions you ask, how did you convince your families? That's like the toughest conversations because you have to give everything to a startup. This notion of work-life balance is cute and it's fine, but if you truly want to achieve something great, it's not for you. I'm sorry. You can do a lot of great things in great businesses and balance it out, but you're not going to change the industry. You're just not. Nobody's that brilliant. You look at anybody who has done anything truly meaningful, world-changing. It requires 1,000% commitment. Now, it doesn't mean that you will do it. You could still, chance are still against you. But the ones that do it have to commit. They have to have no backup plan. They're totally unemployable to do anything else. You're in. You go down with that ship. There are no options. And if you have that mentality, it enables you to solve problems. It enables you to solve problems that other people think are unsolvable. We don't believe they're unsolvable problems. We think they're problems that we haven't figured out or solved yet. We believe there are teams that give up because there's too much at stake and they have to go way too far. And you can't keep playing chicken forever because at some point you give in, you give up. But those that keep fighting through to the end will either die or they will create something that is truly legendary. And look, and it's not a path for everybody. It sounds really romantic and exotic. Then you travel over the world and you do incredible things and you disrupt industries. It is not an easy life. It is the most enjoyable life. And once you taste that freedom and you taste that, I don't know how you can ever go back if it's right for you. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with it not being right for you because you have to be a little bit crazy and you have to, or a lot crazy. You have to be willing to give up everything you have earned and go back to nothing at a moment's notice. And you can't worry about it. You have to get to a point in your mind that that's not what matters anymore. You've done that. You have to be comfortable enough in your skin to be willing to go back to zero again. And I think until you are, and unless you are, you can be a phenomenal person. You can contribute to society. You can do a million incredible things. But stick to that path.
Wonderful. I love your answer, Mike. So, Tisha, I'd love to hear your answer to that question. And after that, both talk a little bit about how do you surround yourself with the right talent for the enterprise you want to build and for the problems you want to solve? Because one thing is to have that mindset, what you describe, Mike, and I will look for your answer, Tisha. But it's another thing to find that team, the founders team, what will be a good fit. And I mean, many things can happen on the founders side. You can disagree on the vision or whatsoever. But how do you surround yourself also with a team? What will help you to get things done? So, Tisha, you answer first on that industrialist mindset.
That is such a hard question. So when I think about what Mike and I have done and compare it to when we were on leadership teams in larger companies, I think that as an industrialist or really someone that's trying to disrupt, you do have to be bold and fearless and crazy, like Mike said, and you can't look back. Right? You can't look backward, and you do have to be willing to give everything up. So you better make sure that you're picking a product, a life choice that is worth giving everything up for. And you have to go in knowing that, I say that we could either rise to the greatest places or we could burst into flames. There's not going to be anything in between. Yeah. It's either you're going to have it and you're going to achieve it, or you're not. Yeah. And as long as you're okay with that, then, and it's not only, I think, being okay in your own skin, but it is about being passionate about what you do. It becomes part of you, and it really is the only thing that I can think about. And that, when we talk about work-life balance, it is my work, it is my life, it is everything that really honestly identifies me now, and it becomes part of you. And it's not something, it would be like giving up an arm or giving up a leg. I mean, it's like you just can't imagine being without it. And that drives the passion and the time.
Yeah. So the combination of passion and purpose, yes, fuels the energy. And you need a lot of energy every day to do what you're doing. I love it.
Yeah. And when you think about the teams, so, when Mike and I started, first, we always hire for the passion and the intellectual curiosity. You have to have people that have the passion for the business. One of the people that works, a young, brilliant person that works for us, he says, I like to take people into the farm. And if they don't have that moment, that reaction of, oh my gosh, and get so excited and have a million questions, chances are this is not the right place for them, because everything we do is around creating that experience for our customer and our consumer where we're providing the freshest, healthiest produce ever. And you have to be passionate about that. You have to be passionate about the product. And and so I think it does take a certain kind of person. We have had the opportunity to be in the food industry for 30 years, for having a lot of people that we know, that we respect, that are crazy enough to want to follow us on this journey. And I can tell you, when you're in the war, because this is like a war every day, you're in it, you want people behind you, you want people next to you that know how to fight too, and are going to fight through this war together. And you know how they're going to react, and you know that they know you and you know them, because we can't be everywhere all the time making all these decisions. And to be able to hand over our baby to other people to be able to start making decisions, you have to have that trust. You have to have that understanding. And so the people that we select, people in our past lives, roughly, probably, 20% of the people have worked with us for decades, not necessarily just, a couple months or a couple years. And family, we do believe this is a family business. This is a professional business. But, when you have certain key roles and you have an amazing family that's super competent and is as passionate about the business as we are, then it makes sense. Now, it creates a whole different dynamic, but it also is something that is part of our culture.
Yeah, I'd love to add a few things. You asked about agreeing and disagreeing, and I want to just add a couple comments on the team. Again, not to sound a bit arrogant, but at the risk of that, require a lot of our teams. We expect people to be curious. We expect people to be egoless, best ideas to win. We expect people to be gritty and to be fighters, and we expect people to be passionate. And that is much more important to me than pedigree and pretty paper from Ivy League universities. Much more important. And Tisha articulated that well. This is where we think we can honestly out Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley started with founders and mentality such as that on chips, then it did it with software. But a lot of it has turned into ego, fast cars, and money. And everybody coming out of school from Stanford, expects to make as much as I pay myself, and they want 20% of the company because everybody's the most brilliant person. I don't want to touch those people with a 10-foot pole. It's going to destroy companies like it's destroying a lot of companies in Silicon Valley. And this is where Midwest can stand up. This is where Midwest needs to have pride. This is where other parts of the country need to realize that we can't just imitate. We have to understand why Silicon Valley worked, because it created this incredible ecosystem of financial partners and great schools and creativity and people that were willing to give everything up for a dream and just work for equity. It has churned a lot into a money-grabbing, egotistical, I'm the smartest, I'm the best, and I'm going to do everything. And that's not how you build businesses. And people don't understand that. And this is where I would take our team today against any team in any startup. I don't care how much they raised. Stick us on any field, have us play any sport or any game. And I would take our team against anybody in a country, anybody in the world, because our team will always win, because they will believe in it. They will approach it as a team. They will do whatever the team needs to do to win. We are the 300. Ever since we got to 300 employees, we love that analogy. We are the 300, and we'll take on millions because everyone will do what is right for the 300. It's not an individual effort. Everyone is an incredible individual, but we still think like that 300. That's the team. And you talked about agreements and disagreements, and I just want to double click on that as well. You said, what happens when founders disagree and others disagree? Tisha and I disagree all the time. Our teams have very open disagreements. We encourage it. If you have groupthink, you're dead. Yeah. So our board, the reason that I think we have survived these very difficult markets and build and created a great, great company and continue to build in challenging markets is because we have a lot of disagreements with our board. We have a lot of disagreements internally. Disagreements fuel innovation. They fuel dissatisfaction with status quo. They fuel search for answers and never being satisfied with where you are. They fuel startups. If we have two people saying the same thing, I don't need one of them, right? I mean, we want disagreements. Now, we have a rule. We approach everything respectfully, unlike the country today where, nobody can talk to each other. We have honest discussions. We have them respectfully, and we come to a decision, and we all follow that decision as a team, but we don't naturally get there with the same point of view. And that's a really, really important point that companies need to understand, that countries need to understand. We have to get back to respectful thinking, not assuming that I'm right because I have a title, I came to a good school, I have more money, whatever in the hell it is that drives these egotistical views. We need to get to best answer wins. And the best answer today might be different than the best answer tomorrow. But we're all listening, we're open, we're discussing, we're debating. If we make a mistake, by the way, as a team, we raise our hand, we pivot, and we fix it. We don't sit there that I made it, nobody can say that I'm wrong because, I'm the CEO and a co-founder. That doesn't exist. All of those elements have to bred into the culture. Tisha can make a decision. Her team will debate, and we will end up making the right decision. It might take us a while to get there, but disagreement is not a bad thing.
Absolutely.
Right? And you have to
and I like,
in.
Mike, that you made that clarification because this is so important. Companies need that constructive dialogue and that challenging of ideas. If you are absolutely right, if everybody agrees on everything, it's already a lost battle. Yeah. Excellent. So we spoke about work-life balance. No need to come back there. I have one closing question to wrap that up. You mentioned California and how they have created an ecosystem for success for their own industry, but why there are also risks on the horizon, and why what you do has better chances here. Talk a little bit about the ecosystem and the region here, and why is that a region to win for exactly what you are doing?
I'll start, and I want to just clarify what I said. I mean, I'm not knocking other ecosystems and everything else. I just think that ecosystem is a living, breathing organism, just like a company, and it has to evolve. And it always does evolve. And sometimes it evolves to a point where it is no longer effective to meet the original goals. And then it'll self-correct because money flows will follow success. And look, I think Cincinnati in particular in Midwest is a phenomenal place to start a business. I think it's small enough where you know everybody. It's a community atmosphere. We have, by the way, our issues. People don't understand stock options and wealth creation the same way that the coasts do. And we have to overcome that. And to do that, we have to have successes, and we have to have young people growing through this, seeing how it's done, and starting their own companies. So we have to build the ecosystem in the Midwest. It's not going to happen itself. Midwest is often more conservative and more understated. So there's a lot more thoughts about wealth preservation than wealth creation. And those that have created wealth are more worried about preserving it. So there are a lot of things that Midwest lacks that we are working on, and we have to create it and force that to occur. But Midwest is a beautiful place to start a business. There's great people, great work ethic, great universities, great financial partners, great everything. It's not hard to do seed and A rounds in the Midwest. You just don't have a lot of B and C rounds. And then you have to go out, and then you have to, kind of adapt. So Midwest needs to build its own ecosystem, learning from what others have done. We're trying to do our small part in that. And it's not something that's built overnight. It requires partners. I think the big thing that big Midwest has is, and again, a lot of other communities, this big co, small co, possible need for collaboration, right? Necessity is the mother of invention. Because we don't have the ecosystem of Silicon Valley, we have to create our own. We're not copying it, but we're using what we have here that is not working in Silicon Valley. And that's the partnerships with great companies like Procter & Gamble and Kroger and many others, and Mars Company. And the thing is, we have to be realistic, because as a super small company, it doesn't make sense for them to partner with us. We have to earn our stripes, so to speak, to get to a point where we have to earn those collaborations, but we can get there faster and we can get there better. We have to find what works for us here. But I think it's an incredible community to start things and to grow things and to frankly stay a little more stealthy until you're ready for those national expansions, and then start speaking loudly. But when you speak loudly, people will listen because you will have earned it. And it's not just, trust me, I'll build something in 10 years. It's, we have built it, we're expanding it. You need to be a part of it.
I think that in the Midwest, the thing that I love the most is the people, the hardworking ethic, the frugality, and the practicality. And also, it's a large population center. So when you think about within 100 miles of Cincinnati, the number of lives we can touch, the number of salads that we could serve, it's a great place to be able to start a business and learn from mistakes. People are forgiving of those mistakes, and then move forward.
Thank you, Tisha, and thank you, Mike. I could go on for hours having that conversation with you, but unfortunately, at some point, we need to wrap it up. And I will love at some point to continue the dialogue and to see how everything evolves. But I have absolutely no doubt that you are rock stars and you will continue to rock and roll and build a fantastic new agro food tech, whatever is the right name you use for that new company, playing in so many different sectors. So thank you again for joining us for this podcast. I will hand over now for Anne for closing comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you
very much. A lot more work to do, but thank you.
Well, thank you, Tisha and Mike, for taking us on this incredible journey and sharing your passion for revolutionizing food production with technology and manufacturing excellence. Your mission to make healthy, high-quality food accessible to all is truly inspiring. It's been a true pleasure and a great inspiration having you on the show. So now to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this exploration into the world of manufacturing excellence. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback means the world to us. Remember, this is just one chapter in our ongoing series of conversations with industrial leaders. Stay tuned for additional riveting stories, insights, and strategies on the Industrialist podcast. I'm Anne Capel, and on behalf of Yannick Shelley and the entire team at Altox Consulting, thank you for being part of our community. Until next time, keep innovating, keep leading, and keep making an impact in the industrial world.